Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. That's right, today we're going over a Paladin skill that we haven't covered yet before. Can you guys guess which one it is by my bar down here? That's right, it's Sanctuary. So, Sanctuary is a rather interesting aura in many ways because it has a lot going on that is behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about. Some people do, but it also doesn't really do what you think it does, and it has other things that are kind of just mishmashed in, and it's a complicated ability. Let me just say, when I first started researching Sanctuary for my Paladin on the Players 8, the 8-player Paladin run that we had the other day, I was kind of a little bit confused on the way the ability works, and if you pull up some data on the ability, which I think I still have up somewhere. I do. So we got skills, Paladin. On Amazon Basin, you can go over a lot of this information. Sorry for blinding your eyes. Basically, Sanctuary has some oddities. So even though the skill itself, by the way, which says 930% enhanced damage to undead, it doesn't actually give you that. It doesn't actually do that for you. It's a lie. I don't know why it says that, because what it actually does is it reduces the physical DR of the monster to 0%. So basically, any undead monster that you come across while using this particular aura, it's going to reduce the resistance of that monster to 0%, which is going to make it so that they are basically really easy to kill. Because most monsters in Hell difficulty have like a 50% physical resistance or higher, and even if they are immune, they are still reduced to 0% DR. However, the problem is that it doesn't stack with Amplify Damage or Decrepify. So, Amplify Damage and Decrepify will also apply to the target, but if the target doesn't go below 0%, then it's just redundant and it doesn't actually do anything. So the enhanced damage to undead and the enhanced AR to undead are actually completely a lie. It doesn't actually do that. Which is rather odd because, you know, you'd think they would have fixed that eventually, but Sanctuary just does what it wants to do. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, it means that when you go and attack a monster with high physical damage attacks in a Player's 8 environment, the monsters get absolutely demolished from existence. But here's the weird catch, is that it doesn't matter what level the Sanctuary is. So whether you have level 1 Sanctuary or whether you have level 20 Sanctuary or level 40 Sanctuary, it still sets the monster's physical resistance to 0. So even a level 1 Sanctuary can still be extremely useful for killing, say, you know, an undead monster, even if they're physically immune. So if you're running along in Hell difficulty, you happen to have at least 1 point in Sanctuary, you come across a physically immune, you know, like undead monster, you can literally just switch to Sanctuary and kill him, even if you have basically no points in the ability. But to give you a demonstration of how really cool this ability is, let's go die real quick to Pindle, which is always fun when he's Might Enchanted. Little tip is to stand right here on this side of the wall because it will protect you from the multiple charges. So even in this situation where you're fighting Mighted Pindle, if you don't run out, like I just did right there, you can generally protect yourself from multiple charge strikes at the same time. As you can see, I was able to survive 1 charge strike, which is common, but not multiple charge strikes. So as soon as I left the safety of the little ledge with the Mighted Pindle, there was absolutely no chance I was going to be able to survive multiple charge strikes at the same time. So use that little ledge to your advantage, especially if you end up with Mighted or Fanaticized Pindle, because the little ledge will prevent them from being able to all charge you at the same time, which will help out a ton. However, in this particular case, we're just going to run out here and we're going to have a little bit of fun with it, because we are a Sanctuary Pindle killer. And as you can see, even in P8, I can pretty much absolutely demolish Pindle from existence. And this is thanks to the Sanctuary Aura. The Sanctuary Aura reduces Pindle's resistance to 0, which allows me to do massive amounts of physical damage. But that's not the only thing that Sanctuary does, and Sanctuary has some other rather interesting abilities. One is the ability to basically interrupt anything that an undead monster is trying to do. So as you can clearly see here, these monsters in particular are trying to make their way toward me. And they will eventually get to me. It's just a matter of time. They're going to eventually make it to me, but they are constantly being knocked back by Sanctuary. Now, this is one reason why you might want to spend more than 1 point into Sanctuary, and the reason is the radius of the ability. So at a really low level, Sanctuary has a really pathetic radius, and so it's not really going to hit the monsters like this one is. However, when you level it up a little bit, the radius starts to go up pretty dramatically, and eventually it gets to the point where the radius is, as you can see, 20.6 yards is what I'm currently at level 27. And what this does is it acts as a defensive mechanic versus undead. There's a lot of undead. Many different undead throughout the game. There's fire archers, which everybody hates. There is, you know, like freaking a ton of undead monsters just all over the place. Granted, there are also tons of places where there are not undead monsters, and you're going to have to mess around with those guys as well. But when you do come across undead monsters, what you're going to notice is that the ability just, like, makes them useless. And what do I mean by useless? Well, let's see if we can find some archers real quick here. So we've got some archers and some melees. And as you can see here, the archers are trying to attack me. The melees are trying to attack me, but they constantly get knocked back. And it generally just makes their lives a living hell. So they can't actually fire at me with the speed and efficiency that they would normally fire their bows at me. They're stuck in a cycle of endless, like, okay, I'm going to try to fire at you, sometimes I'll get that shot off, but then you're going to knock me back, then I have to recover from that hit, then I'm going to try to fire at you again, and it makes their attacks very ineffective by comparison. So for instance, if I were to switch over to a different aura besides Sanctuary, so let's switch over to Cleansing, you'll notice that now all of a sudden their attack pattern has ceased to become random. So they're just going to continually attack at me. They're going to attack in sequence. Every single skeleton is going to get his attack off, and there's going to be no delay between their attacks, which is a big difference between Sanctuary, which is going to literally cause them to have a huge delay in between their attacks. Half the time they're not going to get their attacks off, and it's going to basically just make their life a living hell actually trying to dish out any damage to me. So not only does Sanctuary offer a massive amount of damage output to undead monsters, but it also has a very strong effect in causing the undead monsters to just generally not have a good time trying to attack you. And fire archers are just one example. In the River of Flame or Chaos Sanctuary, when you come across the which of course they're not here, when you come across the cursing type monsters, the Oblivion Knights are also affected by this. So you end up in a situation where you have them trying to curse you on a regular basis, which of course they love to do. They love to curse you, right? Amplify damage, decrepify, they're going to curse weaken, lower resistance, all those beautiful curses they're going to try and hit you with on a regular basis. Well, you're going to constantly and never-endingly be knocking them back and just making their life annoying. You're just going to annoy the ever-loving crap out of them. And in the process, you're going to cause them to have a hard time actually trying to get those curses off on you, which is actually kind of interesting. Because when you think about it, you know, having the monsters not be able to curse you as effectively as they would normally is certainly useful. But this is something that you don't get if you only 1 point Sanctuary. So recently I tried to do a theory craft, and I was playing around with all the various ideas, trying to figure out how many points I actually needed to put in Sanctuary. Should I actually build the Synergy, which is another interesting topic. So the Synergy for Sanctuary is Cleansing. Cleansing is a 7% damage bonus per point, which does equal, I believe, up to 140% damage increase at its maximum. This does not increase the on-hit damage, because the on-hit damage is actually coming from the fact that their physical resistance has been set to 0. right? So the physical resistance being set to 0 is literally unaffected at all by the synergy. So you don't have to dump any points into cleansing. Of course, cleansing is a very nice ability, don't get me wrong, and having level 20 cleansing is something that your group will definitely thank you for, because removing curses and removing poisons is extremely effective in keeping your group alive. But if you don't want the actual pulse damage, which is the 232 to 572 that's on here, you don't have to build the sanctuary or the cleansing at all, because that particular pulse damage is only the effect of the sparkling ground. And you still get the knockback effect, and you still get damage output from it, even if you don't build the synergy, which makes Sanctuary just a 20-point skill, because you don't have to build that. Now, you do get double damage when you're close to monsters with that ability. So it's interesting to think about it from a perspective of trying to build the highest damage output of Sanctuary that you can. And basically what you would do in this case is you would get really high plus to skills. You'd beef up the cleansing synergy, because that would get you your 140% magic damage. And if you manage to get Sanctuary to around level 45, you could potentially have something about like 2,300 damage per 2 seconds, which is going to be roughly about 1,320 every second to any monster that's within melee range of you, and about half that for any monster that's not within melee range. It's not a considerably high amount of damage, and I don't really see a good reason to build that specifically. But getting the radius up by putting points in the ability does make the ability more useful, in that it knocks back targets from further away and interrupts monsters from a greater distance. Now, keep in mind, though, that most monsters won't attack you off the screen. So if a monster is further than the corners of your screen, they're probably not going to attack you. And so in this particular situation, you really only need the radius of Sanctuary up high enough so that the monsters are getting knocked back and affected so that they don't attack you, but you don't need them to be affected if they're off the screen, because in that situation they're too far away to do anything to you anyway, and it doesn't really matter. There are a lot of undead areas within the game that you could take advantage of. Arcane Sanctuary is 66% undead. There are, of course, ghosts and ghoul lords, and it works extremely well on the ghosts and ghoul lords in this particular area. Obviously, Canyon of the Magi, if you go into the tombs, pretty much all of the tombs will have undead in them of some sort. There are also multiple types of undead that you can potentially find there. There's ghosts, there's skeletons, there's Haradrim. There's all sorts of very interesting things that will definitely have a strong effect with Sanctuary, and you can get some pretty good use out of it. On top of this, River of Flame will often have a decent amount of undead, but Chaos Sanctuary is actually 66% undead. So the Stranglers, which are in Chaos Sanctuary, are undead, and then of course the Doom Knights and the actual mages are both undead as well. So you've got basically 66% of all the monsters in Chaos Sanctuary are also undead. So another good situation which you could utilize Sanctuary in. Now, some of the places are mostly demons, though. But another interesting place, which let's see if we can find some Gloams in here, is Worldstone Keep actually has a lot of monsters that are undead. The horror mages, obviously. Good lord, I need my cleansing. Frickin' crit poison. Another benefit, of course, of having the that crit poison is so nasty. Another benefit, of course, of having the cleansing aura is that you can clear off crit poisons like that, which are freaking nasty. Let's see if we can play with the Gloams. I don't know if I want to play with the Gloams. It's gonna be scary, but let's do it anyway. All right, first let's remove our poison real quick from our freaking ridiculous crit poison of doom over here. Let's put some actual points into my vitality so I actually have HP. So let's see how strongly this affects Gloams in terms of their damage output. Of course, we have a Conviction Skeleton over here. No thank you, sir. had to get the worst freaking poison skeletons down here while I'm trying to test out the Gloams. So here we got a Black Soul, and the Black Soul is trying to shoot lightning at me. As you can see, normally the Black Soul will shoot lightning pretty quickly, like 1, 2, 3. But when he's unaffected by the knockback, the frequency at which he casts lightning goes down ridiculously. But as you can see, if he gets knocked back against the wall, he can then cast it multiple times. For demonstration purposes, let me take off the Sanctuary Aura. And show what it's like when you don't have the Sanctuary Aura up. So as you can see, without the Sanctuary Aura, he's just going to sit there and spam lightning at me repeatedly until I'm dead. But if I put the Sanctuary Aura back up, now he's in a situation where he keeps stopping, he keeps getting knocked back. He can't quite spam it as well, because he's getting knocked away from me constantly. Still dishing out pretty good damage, though. But he is getting interrupted a lot. It will help you kill them really easily, too. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about Gloams is that Gloams have extremely high physical resistance. So when you try to kill a Gloam without basically Sanctuary or something that will reduce their physical resistance, it's actually pretty difficult to kill them. So for instance, if I swap to, I don't know, just a regular attack here, you notice that I did about, what, 10% of the monster's HP with that attack. If I switch back to Sanctuary, they're dead in about one hit. Because all that physical resistance that the Gloams have is completely stripped from them, and they no longer have the ability to resist the damage output that you're putting out. This is something that's very interesting about Gloams that you only really find out when you remove their physical resistance. But by removing their physical resistance, you make them extremely easy to kill, which means that when you're going up against Gloams, if you have sufficient lightning resistance, by the way, Sanctuary could be a very effective way to take out Gloams quickly, which is usually how you want to take out Gloams. You usually want to take out Gloams quickly. As you can see here, I can pretty much just find the Gloams and kill them immediately. Of course, that was a little spicy. I don't really have high enough lightning resistance on this character, unfortunately. So, what basically am I saying about Sanctuary as an ability? It's worth 1 point. First off, it's definitely worth 1 point. It will allow you to bypass the physical resistance of any undead monster that you come across, and it is definitely a very powerful 1-point wonder. There are 2 items in the game that will offer you the Sanctuary Aura, are Azure Wrath and Lawbringer, but the problem with both of those is they have relatively low physical damage, and they don't really offer the physical damage that you would need to take advantage of the Sanctuary Aura as a whole. So, if you're a physical damage Zealer, a physical damage Paladin of basically any type, Sanctuary becomes an absolutely amazing 1-point wonder because it literally just gives you the ability to bypass any physical immunity of just about any undead monster that you come across, including the physical resistance of any undead monster that you come across. If you want to put more points into it to increase the radius, to harass the undead monsters that you're fighting, to prevent them from being able to shoot lightning at you, shoot fire at you, shoot ice at you, curse you, fire arrows at you in general, it will actually help you tremendously in those situations. One such situation that I can think of off the top of my head is the Ubers. Most of the monsters in the Ubers are actually undead monsters. Mephisto will spawn skeleton archers as well as skeleton mages, which all can be interrupted by the Sanctuary ability. Baal summons forth ghoul lords and ghosts, which all can be interrupted by the Sanctuary ability. On top of that, the ghosts and the ghoul lords are both immune to physical, which means that Sanctuary will help you bypass the physical immunity of both the ghosts and the ghoul lords inside the Uber Tristram. The only monsters in Uber Tristram that are not undead are, of course, Uber Mephisto, Uber Bale, and Pandemonium Diablo, as well as the demon lords, the pit lords or whatever, that are immune to basically everything except for physical. But Sanctuary would actually help you deal with the majority of the adds within that zone. As a skill, I'm not really 100% sold on actually like dumping points into it. And although I theory crafted this particular character around Sanctuary, I get the feeling that he would work just fine even without Sanctuary. And would probably be better off if I just 1.1'd Sanctuary and moved on with my day, which is where I'm going to leave this video. I think Sanctuary is a very good 1-point wonder for just about any Paladin, with the exception of elemental damage Paladins, which wouldn't really get much good effect from this. But if you are a physical damage Paladin of pretty much any type, it will definitely help. One caveat with this particular skill is that the physical damage reduction that it offers does not apply to Crushing Blow. So, interestingly enough, Crushing Blow does not work if the monster is physically immune. And if you amplify damage or decrepify a target and remove that physical immunity, you can still Crushing Blow the target to death. But the problem is that Sanctuary's reduction in physical damage reduction, physical resistance, does not actually allow Crushing Blow to work. So it still functions as if the monster is immune to physical damage with Crushing Blow, even though the monster is not. But you can still hit them with Deadly Strike, you can still hit them with Open Wounds, you can still hit them with your physical damage as well as elemental damage sources. You just can't hit them specifically with the Crushing Blow effect, which is an oddity. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when I spend 22 minutes talking about Sanctuary and its effectiveness in your character. And as always, keep watching.